Crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a video for my guest design team position at ScrapbookingwithME. And so you may have remembered the haul video that I shared. If not, I'll link that in the video description so you can check out the products that I'll be working with. But I promised that I would show you how to use Distress Oxide inks to create a rainbow blended background, and I would do something with that. And I thought that it made sense to pair the rainbow background with the unicorns, and that was intentional as I picked up the different supplies from Scrapbooking with Me. So the set that I'm using is from Stampin' Bella. All links will be in the video description, and it has 4 unicorns in it. I decided I would just stamp all 4 of them, and I would actually stamp them each several times because I knew that I would most likely want to cut these with my Scan and Cut and use them on various projects. So I didn't think I'd want to stamp directly to paper, and I'll talk a little bit more about why that is later in the video. So I'm going to stamp a bunch of them on Recollections 110-pound cardstock, but any quality, good quality Copic coloring cardstock would be great, since I'm going to be Copic coloring today. But with these unicorn stamps, they are cling rubber, so when you put them in a Misty, you do have to take the foam pad out of the Misty in order for it to work. They're going to be really quality stamps though, especially because they have the rubber material, and so you don't need a Misty to stamp them. I'm just going to stamp a few, and I'm going to stamp all 4 at once, so the Misty actually will save me time, whereas of course if you were just stamping one, using a stamp block would be sufficient. I did find that with these Stampin' Bella images, the lines on the images are very fine, they're very thin, and that needs to be taken into consideration for a few reasons. As you're coloring, it makes it a little bit easier to get the colors, like the colors bleed outside the lines easier. Thicker lines are more forgiving. But I also found that when you're stamping, you have to be a little bit more careful about getting ink in other places on the stamp that you don't want it. So I'm no Copic coloring expert, and so I don't usually go into too much detail in terms of Copic coloring. There's a lot of other great colorists out there like Sandy Allnock and Kelly Lativola, and so I would certainly recommend you checking those 2 out. But I did want to share that I want my unicorns to be white, and the way to get something white is actually to color it with grays. You still need to give it shadow, otherwise it appears really flat. So I'm going to use C1 and C0. A lot of times for animals, I'll tend towards the warmer colors and use the W's, but in the case of the unicorn, I think you're looking for a much more pure white. I like the W's because they give a sense of the creature being alive in, because they would have that warmth to their skin tone. But I think that with this particular animal, the C's actually work a little bit better because it kind of gives that more glossy feel. And that's why I use them for robots, for that same look of it looking like sort of shiny and glossy, and you want a unicorn's coat and to be glossy. So I hope that makes sense why I chose those. I'm gonna color the horn and the ears pink. I don't want to add too much color to my unicorns because I'm going to be doing a rainbow background, and I don't want any one color to be too dominant. So the first time I colored the unicorn, when I was practicing, I colored it purple, and I kind of didn't like the idea that the purple would be one of the colors in the rainbow, so I tried to think about what colors wouldn't come up in the rainbow. There isn't really pink in the rainbow, it goes from red to orange, and I'm going to go with a turquoise. Now, when you mix the blue and green in part of the rainbow, you can get a sort of turquoise color, but again, I just thought that it kind of stood out a little bit more, so rather than matching part of it, it's really just a personal preference. But that was my thought behind why I chose turquoise. And so when I go to color the unicorn hair this time, I'm going to pull out my hex chart from Sandy Allnock, who I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to look at how my colors go together. I'm going to try to pick something a little bit paler. Even though my card is going to be really bright, I'm trying to go for more of a pastel-y sort of turquoise than a really bright turquoise. And so I believe I wound up with BG34 and BG15. One of the reasons that I like the hex chart and I recommend it, I think it's only a couple bucks, is because it can help you see how markers that you might not initially think go together actually do. So it might be obvious that BG15 and BG13 go together, maybe not so obvious that the 34 will work in there. So I have cut out my unicorns with my scan and cut, and as you can see, it has even cut out that little butterfly that goes with the unicorn, and it's given a border around all of them. If you want to know how to cut images on the scan and cut, I have a video dedicated to explaining that process, and I'll also link that in the video description. But now I have a whole bunch of unicorns ready to go, and I thought at first I was just going to make one card, but I wound up using all of the unicorns and doing a couple different rainbow backgrounds, but I'm just going to show you one on video because they're, the rainbow process is all the same. So here I am starting with the Distress Oxide inks. I like the way that they blend compared to the regular Distress inks. I think they're both nice, but the Oxides give a creamier look. They cover more completely, faster, and yeah, it's just one of those things where I have all the Distress Oxides and I'm not getting rid of them, and I love them, but the original Distress. But the Oxides are really fun too, and it's probably just kind of a newness thing, and that's why I'm playing with them. I store my Oxides with the foam pads, the coordinating foam pads, glued to the bottom with Velcro. You can instead just have like one foam for all your purples, one foam for all your blues. A lot of people do it that way with the traditional Distress inks. I've always kind of just liked to have a separate foam for each one because sometimes the color changes slightly depending on what color you last put on the foam. To get this blended look, I am using Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I much prefer Bristol Smooth to any other cardstock for blending regular Distress inks, traditional Distress inks, and Distress Oxides. I feel like it gives a smoother blend with less effort and covers well. The only disadvantage to it is not a pure white. When you're covering the whole piece with Distress ink, that's not really relevant. So as I blend this on, you may have noticed that what I tend to do is lay down some color, like I laid down the purple, then I laid down some blue, and I went back with the purple and blended it into the blue to achieve that smoother look, and I'm going to continue that process for the most part with the colors. So I put down some yellow, then some orange, went back to the yellow and blended between them. I really like the Distress Oxides because of their blendability into each other. I think that as much as traditional Distress blend really well, the Oxides even bring it to a whole other level. In terms of the particular colors of Distress Oxide I am using, it is the 3 Oxides that I showed in the haul video, which were the, I believe, Spice Marmalade, Fired Brick, and Fossilized Amber. Then the other colors are Peeled Paint, Wilted Violet, and Broken China. There are some other colors available now, so if you're interested in the Distress Oxide inks, I would say head over to the Scrapbooking with Me store and see what is available, because there is a wider range now and you might be able to choose a rainbow that works better for you. Once I have it blended, you see I hit it with a heat gun real quick. You don't need to do that step, but I sometimes like the way that it reacts with water better after it's a bit dry as opposed to when it's wet. Here I am spritzing with my Distress sprayer, just trying to get little droplets, not a mist. And so you want to lock the Distress sprayer to get those droplets so that it doesn't spray all the way. Then I'm using a Shimmer Mist. There's all kinds of Shimmer Mists out there. It doesn't matter which one you use, but I'm just trying to get a little bit of shine. I think sparkles, rainbows, unicorns, all of those go together excellent, so I'm just spritzing that. And that is going to be more of a mist look. And so I wanted the water to create these white droplets that you're seeing, that oxidized effect, and then the mist to create the sparkle. To finish off my card, I'm going to do a little bit of die cutting. And I'm going to try to create a sort of inlay look. And I'll give you some tips on how to create that effect, although it's been done a few times, so I'll be pretty brief in my directions, because I'm sure some of you are familiar with the idea. Here I'm going to cut a frame and a word out of the rainbow paper that I just created. I'm going to use a little bit of low tack painter's tape to keep that secure. I've chosen a frame that has an inside piece and an outside piece. I just encourage you to shop your stash, see what's there and what you can work with it. Now with the hello, there's going to be all these little pieces, and you need to keep those because I'm going to put some black paper behind the hello, and I want the black to show through. This first card is actually not inlaid die cutting. I misspoke. I'm going to try to let the black show through, but there's going to be a secondary card that has some inlaid die cutting that I'm going to go over quickly. But now that I've die cut those pieces out of the rainbow cardstock that I created, I'm going to glue this down to some black paper. And I'm going to use a combination of my ATG gun and multimedia matte. Any strong adhesive will do, doesn't really matter. I've glued this down, but as you can see, I need all the little pieces inside the hello, and I also want to add back in that big chunk of rainbow square that would go in the center of this frame die. So what I'm going to do is place the frame in without gluing it down because I don't want it to stay there, but I'm just going to place it in. Then I'm going to put adhesive on the square and place that in and peel up the frame so that I know that it's exactly centered. And I'm going to do the same thing with the hello. This allows me to put those little pieces in kind of like a puzzle. So I just place the hello there and not put any adhesive on it, then put adhesive on the smaller inside pieces, and I'll be able to lift the hello out and everything will be perfectly placed without any guesswork, without any fiddling or fussing, etc., etc. I've heard other suggestions of putting press and seal on it so that you can keep the pieces in place, but I find this to actually probably be the easiest method to do this, but whatever works for you is great. And so now I have a fun background piece and a die cut sentiment, but in a little bit of an untraditional way. The actual black die cut I have to use on a future card. And you could have just die cut the hello and the frame out of black and glued it on top, but by using this method, it just gives it a slightly different look. It makes it a little bit more interesting, and it adds to the effect of layers on it. It's just a personal choice. Like I said, the black frame would have been very, very similar, but I like the little bit of extra detail that this adds. I'm going to use some really thin foam tape to pop up my unicorn, and that's going to have my first card done. But I did want to use those rainbow pieces that I had die cut on a second card. And so I have the hello and the frame. But again, I'm going to want to die cut out the frame and the hello, and this time I am going to do inlay die cutting, where I'm going to put all of the black pieces back but replace the hello and the frame with the rainbow. So I'm going to die cut it and glue it in. I did not film that process just because it was so similar to what I had just done with the other one, and I knew that this video was going to get a little bit longer. So I hope that you have found this video helpful and inspiring. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I will be having another guest design video for Scrapbooking with Me coming up very soon, about 6x6 paper pads, or a 6x6 paper pad, and you can check all of the links in the video description to go to the Scrapbooking with Me store and pick up the supplies that I mentioned. Thanks so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Bye.